Coming up on the Paper Talk today, we're talking about Jason Wilcox. It looks like he's going to be joining the Ineos revolution at Manchester United. Plus, we'll have some more stories about potential successors to Erik Ten Hag, if indeed he is leaving. Let's get into it. Jay here, Stretford, Paddock. This is the Paper Talk. As you can see, I'm outside Old Trafford, and right, it's weird because it looks cold, but it isn't. But if you've got your parkers, put them on. You'll know what I mean. Anyway, loads of stories to get through. The big story this morning, which we'll crack on with, is about Jason Wilcox. But before I get into that, make sure you are hitting like, share, and subscribe. We want to get to 750,000 subscribers by the end of the season, and with your support, yes, you could do it. You know, even better than the end of the season. Imagine we could do it by the end of the month. Imagine by the time Joe Smith gets back with its 750,000 subscribers. What a treat that would be for the lad. Anyway, Jason Wilcox, yes. Now, people of a certain age, my age, will remember Jason Wilcox as a marauding winger who played for Blackburn and helped them, unfortunately, win the title in 1995 against Manchester United. But since he retired from playing, he's become a coach, and he was at City. He was an academy coach there. He helped coach their under-18s teams. I think he helped them get to 2 FA Youth Cup finals. Then he went into a role as their director of the academy. And then last year, I think it was, he went to Southampton as director of football, obviously. A huge role there at a club that, okay, Southampton, they're in the Championship, but they've always been a sort of a well-run club. Well, over the last sort of 10, 15 years, whatever it was, since they had troubles when it looked like they were going to go under, they've sort of rallied round there, progressed well, and always had what's considered to be a decent setup. He's been part of that more recently. However, he wants to come to Manchester United, so he's resigned. Now, there's a bit of intrigue here, because Romano's tweeted about this, and you'll see it basically says that he's agreed to come to Manchester United. The terms are agreed, agreement's been reached. So, in terms of him coming to United and being part of the Ineos projects, which is what Romano tweeted about, that's all done. However, Southampton are unhappy, because what happened when this story broke, it seemed that Southampton were unwilling to let him go, and they weren't happy with the compensation that Manchester United were offering. United were offering to sort of a buyout clause, which they believed was, I think, a year of his salary to get him from Southampton. Southampton said there was a little bit of back and fro going. I think it's in the Mirror and a couple of other papers where Southampton was saying this isn't the case, we want more or whatever. However, Jason Wilcox has resigned. He said, right, I'm walking away. I'm going to go and join you, Manchester United. Whether that's the end of it remains to be seen. You think that might be, but there could be some intrigue here. There could be Southampton push back and say there's clauses in his contract which forbids him from just going straight into another job. I don't know. But the latest news we have on it is that basically he's agreed a deal to come to Manchester United. Terms and all that should be sorted. So he's coming to Manchester United to become part of the new setup with Ineos. We know that we've already got Omar Barada coming in as CEO. Dan Ashworth is another sort of administrator, coach, not coach really, it's more of a sort of overseer who's meant to be coming in. However, there has been a little bit of back and forth between Newcastle when it comes to Dan Ashworth, whether he can come in as some sort of sporting director or director of football, because Newcastle don't want to let him go. He's obviously wanted to leave, so they're like, okay, he's going to leave. Then there was this talk about how much what his notice period was when he could leave Newcastle, back and forth over that. Newcastle didn't want him to join United till after the transfer window. Manchester United saying, well, that's ridiculous. We need him for the transfer window. That's the whole sort of point of him coming here. Then there was an argument as well, sort of simultaneously, about his compensation, his buyout clause. Newcastle apparently wanted 20 million quid. United and Ineos are like, that's not happening. That's ridiculous. There was talk that maybe closer to 10 million quid, which is still a lot of money for a director of football or a sporting director, could be reached. That could be sort of nearer to the mark. Then, just to add more sort of petrol to this never-ending fire, there was talk that there might be a deal in place where Newcastle stop him, or he's not allowed to buy anyone from Newcastle or make any deals with Newcastle to try and get any of their players, which kind of makes sense to me, to be honest with you. I understand all that, but we need all these issues sorted, if you can call them issues, before the season kicks off, certainly before the window kicks off, never mind the season, before the summer transfer window starts. We want Wilcox in place, we want Omar Barada in place, and we want Dan Ashworth in place. Now, Barada should be okay. Wilcox, we'll have to wait and see. Ashworth is the one that seems to be the biggest sticking point there, with Newcastle pushing back, but they need it sorted as well. I think they're looking to bring in Paul Mitchell, who's a much sought-after director of football, was heavily linked with Manchester United for quite some time. So hopefully all this can get resolved, and Manchester United can go into the summer transfer window with a director of football, a CEO, and a sporting director, or whatever the roles are going to be, in place and move forward in terms of the new setup and transfers. Whether Erik Ten Hag is going to be part of that new setup remains to be seen. The fact is, no one seems to know just how secure his job is. And to be honest with you, it might depend on how the season pans out, because it seems to change week after week. After the Liverpool game, I think a lot of people, myself included, were looking at that and going, look, man, Ineos have got to back this guy. Give him another season. We've just beat Liverpool. We've knocked them out of the FA Cup. Stopped them doing a quadruple. You can see the players are playing for him. Old Trafford's pumping. It's all happy days. Then you go away to Brentford and put in one of the worst performances we've seen all season. And people start going, well, are Ineos, are Sir Jim Ratcliffe, are Dave Brailsford going to stomach more of this? Or are they going to look elsewhere? I think we're going to have to wait and see what happens at the end of the season. One target that might not be available to us is Roberto De Zerbi, if we decide to go for a new manager, of course. De Zerbi's been heavily linked with the Bayern Munich job. Now, apparently his buyout clause from Brighton is around the 12 million quid mark, I think I've read a few places. And the Mirror again were reporting that Bayern Munich are looking at Roberto De Zerbi to come in and take over there. They're also, according to the Mirror, looking at Ralf Rangnick as a potential successor to Thomas Tuchel, which seems like a bit of a strange move, doesn't it? Because when we all think of Ralf Rangnick, well, I do, you think of the football we saw here and how it wasn't very good and how he was a bit of a failure, and the fact that it just became a bit of a circus. We've talked, there was reports that he was reporting, or we had someone sat on a laptop in Moscow feeding back advice to him when he was on the touchline. It just seemed like an absolute horror show. However, his stock in German football is quite high. He's the godfather of Gegenpress, don't you know? Hey, remember that one? We had it here for 40 minutes against Crystal Palace before everyone gave up on it and said, you know what, we're too knackered to do that. Let's not bother with that anymore. But it's interesting because I've seen quite a few clips of Ralf Rangnick over the last sort of few months when people have been pointing out some of the comments he made, some of the statements he made, and how he was pretty accurate. He spoke about Manchester United needing open heart surgery. He said you don't just need 1 or 2 players, you need about 10. And I think we've had about 10 come in since he said that. We probably need another 5 more at least. So he wasn't too inaccurate there. I also saw a video last night when someone was it was him to give an interview, and he said, you can't do a little bit of pressing. You either press or you don't press. It's like you can't be a little bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not, which I thought was quite a funny quote. But it's kind of true, because I think that's part of the issue we've had, is sometimes we look like a team that presses a bit and then doesn't. Now, I'm not saying Ralf Rangnick had all the answers, and I think a lot of what he said in press conference was quite obvious. And sometimes I think he might have been a little bit disingenuous when he was like, well, I've told him to get Haaland, I told him to get Alvarez, I told him to get Diaz, I told him to get, basically listed all the best players in the world, all the best youngsters, and said I told him to get all these. He didn't listen to me. However, there would have been some truth in it, and he certainly was the only manager we've had who properly called out the Glazers. So you've got to respect that at least. So yeah, he's been linked with the Bayern Munich job, but it looks like De Zerbi is favourite there. It's interesting though, because there's a lot of clubs, a lot of teams that are looking for new managers in the summer. We know Liverpool are. De Zerbi's been linked with that job as well. We know Bayern Munich, as I've just mentioned. Barcelona, another club that are looking for a new manager. All these clubs that could be looking for a new manager. If Manchester United are, I'm not saying we should be, but we might be, then we might have to get our skates on if we're going to look for some of these managers, and some of them are already sort of making moves or being touted to go elsewhere. The likes of De Zerbi, the likes of Ruben Amorim at Sporting. They're two of the names that are heavily linked. Thomas Frank's another one, but I don't fancy that. I don't care how well Brentford played against us. I'm not into that one. Also, Gareth Southgate. You can forget that one as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up there. We're going to be back later on today. We've got Off the Bar, myself, Stephen Alston, and a little guest as well. We're on Off the Bar, so make sure if you're not doing already, you are hitting like, share, and subscribe. I've been Jay Motty. This has been The Paper Talk. Thanks for watching.